professor. I'm David Zetlin. I'm not a professor. I'm a postdoc. So for anybody who knows the pecking order in the academic world, there's professors, then there's students, and then there's graduate students, and then there's postdocs. I'm the lowest form of life. No job security. I have enough money to go to Berkeley Bowl and buy any cheese I want. But we're actually usually considered to be a cheap form of labor. I'm actually teaching this class for free, if you believe it, because they wanted to pay me a bunch of money, but then my fellowship won't let me. People that are just coming in against the wall in the back will shoot you later. Oh, so if you didn't know already, it's a 90-person limit class. Is this an open seat here?
Yeah.
How many other open seats? Raise your hand if you have an open seat. There's 2 open seats. Come and sit down. I don't like people standing. So there's a 90-person enrollment. There's a 25-person wait list right now. I talked to Gail in Giannini, and she says, don't say that don't promise anything. I can't promise anything about enrolling you. All you can do is hope that somebody drops. So your job is going to be to convince the person next to you that they should not be taking this class. My job is to convince you that you should take it, because I love being popular. So, and we'll get to the grading later. So, right, so I'm teaching this class kind of for free. They're paying me a whole bunch of money, and then they're taking it out of my salary, the postdoc. So I want you to understand that I have a lot of desire to be here. Are you done? Okay, great. See you later. So I have a lot of desire to be here, and why I'm here is because I like to teach. And teaching is a two-way thing. Okay, you guys have heard of lecturing. This is called teaching. So I will be talking, and you will be asking me questions and learning and saying, I don't get it. Okay, it's not just write down stuff. So that means there will be no PowerPoint. There will be no slides. There will be no computers. Any computers open? Please close them right now. No text messaging, although I can't monitor that. You can use them on the test if you feel like it. It won't help you in life. So this is kind of like a real-life participation class. And the good news is that it's going to be very flexible. The bad news is that there's not going to be as much structure as you're used to. If anybody saw the syllabus, there's no textbook for this class. You might be happy because I just saved you about $140. I find that students don't even read textbooks, so it's kind of a waste of money anyway. So I put 4 books on the class. I'll get to that when I get to the syllabus. But that's just kind of a general introduction about how I want to do this class in terms of teaching style or learning style, if you want to call it that. Now let me tell you, just briefly, because I always like to know who the hell it is that's talking to me. I was born and raised in California, San Francisco and thereabouts. I went to UCLA for my undergrad, and I got into Berkeley, but I turned it down. Too close to home, too close to home. And then I went around and I tried to get rich, and that failed. And then I went traveling for 5 years. And the last real estate bust, that was me. I was in the middle of that. So then I went traveling for 5 years, and I saw a lot of the world, and that was really cool. So I highly recommend traveling. And I came back, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I said, oh, development economics. That sounds interesting. So I actually went to UC Davis, and I got a PhD in agricultural and resource economics in that department. And I went there to study drug cultivation. Why farmers in Peru decide to move their coca into the legal market, which is how they make tea, or the illegal market, which is how they make cocaine. And my advisors thought that was a little bit too dangerous, and not only that, they thought there was no funding. And as you'll find out, the money does actually matter in the academic world as well. So I switched my my dissertation topic, and I went into water. So I am a water or a resource economist. I talk about water all the time. I've got a blog called Aguanomics that I will, you understand the name even, that I will ruthlessly refer to in this class, and you guys are going to be very involved in that blog, as you'll find out when I hand out the syllabus. So I'm basically I come from a department that does natural resource, environmental economics. My specialty is what's called political economy. Political economy was back in the days of Adam Smith. They were combined, the subjects, and they got separated into political science and economic science. And I'm one of the people that likes to bring it back together because politics and economics are very, very interrelated. And because I came from a background of black markets and illicit drug trade, I look at things from a different perspective from a lot of other economists who are like, ooh, I have a lot of math, let me do math. I'm looking at it from corruption and bribery and, that kind of, I think, more interesting stuff. So that's the point of view that you're going to get in this class. And that's the bad news, because it's all my opinion. The good news is that your grades are based on my opinion, right? So all you need to do is kind of say, okay, I just have to do what he's asking me, and as crazy as it might be, I'll get a good grade if I do it. I'm not going to ask you to do stuff that you don't want to do. I'm going to ask you to do well at what you want to do, okay? And we'll get into that as I go over the big picture now. So, and I'm also writing a book, or I will be writing a book concurrent with this class, aimed essentially at your audience. People that are smart enough to understand what I'm talking about, vaguely interested because they have 10 million other things going on in their life, and they want to learn about water. The book is called The End of Abundance. And if anybody noticed, there's this drought thing going on outside. So that's what I'm in the middle of, the big policy debate on the drought. And that's what I do as my day job, and you guys are my recreation. So, I looked at the syllabus. Who here is enrolled in the, is it the EEP major? Right? Who's a major? Who's in the major? Okay, that's a lot of people. Who's not in the major? And are you like undecided, or physics, or econ, environmental policy, sociology, anthropology? I have to take this because someone told me to. Development studies. Development studies. Okay, good. Sorry?
CRS.
What's CRS stand for?
Conservation and Resource Studies.
Good, all right. So if anybody's like, oh my God, I don't want to take economics, this is the class for you, because you'll learn economics in this class, and you'll walk out and say, wow, I like that economic stuff. Seniors, 5th year seniors, 6th year seniors, no. Juniors, okay. Sophomores, right? Freshmen, come on. No Die Hard. Okay, so you guys at least you know how to find the class. I guess the freshmen are still out there wandering around. Okay, so that's you guys. Now, this is going to so every day I'm going to do a little bit of math, because this course is in between. Oh, how many? Sorry, more survey questions. Who has never taken an economics class at Berkeley? Okay, so this is going to be a significant audience here. Who has taken one class, like Econ 1, Intro, or something like that? Okay. Who has taken 2 classes? 3? Okay, so that's what I kind of figured when I was preparing for this class, is that you guys have heard of a thing called utility, or supply, or demand, but you're like, I don't quite get it. So this is going to be about getting it. There's a whole bunch of stuff in this class to be about getting what we mean by supply and demand, and then when you walk out, you say, oh, that's... So you'll be able to link reality with the classroom. This is a very important concept for me. So every day I'm going to do... You definitely need a seat. There's a charitable person. Thank you very much. So every day I'm going to do a little bit of math, and the reason isn't because for those of you in the major, this class is a prereq for a lot of upper division classes, and all the professors are very worried that you're not going to know enough math. And for them, that's important, so I have to deliver the goods on that. And I'm going to try and deliver a little bit of math every day so that you say, okay, math, economics, I can do that. This is not going to be calculus class, okay? There's this big debate, should there be calculus or not. So, here's my first math equation. Now, you guys are familiar with this, right? This is what's called math. Now, this class, economics, is a thing called social sciences, right? So, I'm just going to do it this way. Now, this, I think, believe it or not, this is the biggest problem in economics, is a lot of economists do this. Okay? But the world is like this. If you have experienced this equation before, you know it's not always happening, right? So that's what we mean by social sciences. There are these humans in here, okay? They don't do what you tell them to do. They're very unreliable. They're not rational. We use the word rational all the time, okay? So we're going to be talking a lot about what's rational, what's not rational, and I'm going to be saying, ooh, be careful what you predict here, because you might be thinking this, but you might be getting one of these. Okay? If anybody's been following, and I encourage you to follow any debate, and when you get to the syllabus, you understand why you need to follow a debate. Any debate related to the environment or politics, or not politics in general, but political sciences with environment or resources, because theoretically, if it's your major, you're supposed to know about it, right? And I want you to follow it because you're interested and passionate about it. And look for these kinds of problems. All right? It's the same thing as, oh, let's just set up a tax code, and then people will declare their income and send in some money. And for some reason, that doesn't always work. People don't declare their income. They over-declare on the number of dependents, blah, blah, blah. So the human element in all of these equations is the element that we're going to concentrate on, that unpredictability, okay? Because all that does, after a while, you get a little bit more cautious about these situations. Be very, very worried. If anybody's been following the climate cap and trade bill, the wacky Marx man, the Markley, I can't remember these guys. Say it, help? Waxman Markey? Okay, so this cap and trade bill, a lot of economists like me hated the idea of cap and trade compared to a carbon tax because there's so much more politics involved in cap and trade. And I put this up, it's in my blog somewhere. See, that's the kind of thing I'll say all the time. But there's something in there about how the politicians completely turn this bill into something completely different. So you see the headline, cap and trade bill, and then you see the result, nothing happens, okay? And that's what we're going to do. We're going to figure out this part. What led to nothing happens, okay? That's the political economy of natural resources. Okay, so then, and this this calls to mind what I'm going to call a very simple theory, okay? Utility maximization or cost minimization or any of these expressions. And then the empirical reality. So one example that I thought was interesting when I was this is my first, oh, by the way, lucky you guys, this is my first entire instructor role. I've been a GSI 5 or 6 times. I've been a student way longer than you guys. This is the first time I'm lecturing for 26 lectures. So anyway, thank you. At the end of the quarter, we'll see if it's congratulations for you guys, or semester. So people are saying, well, what's going to happen when gas prices go up? And economists were like, oh, people will drive less because it's more expensive. That's the whole demand curve. You know, price goes up, demand goes down. And then one of my smart-ass students says, people aren't going to drive less. They have to drive. You have to drive. And I was like, actually, you know what? That's kind of a tough one. And so here's the question. When gas prices went to $4 a gallon, did people drive less? What happened? Anybody? Anybody? Talk. Same amount, but anything? Any change in behavior? Was there a change in behavior from $4 gas?
They spent less on it.
They what?
Complained a lot more.
Complained, right?
They started buying cars that had higher miles per gallon.
Higher miles per gallon. That is really critical. Yeah?
They grouped their trips.
Carpooling?
Yeah.
Okay, that's called
the errands they would do, multiple
grouping
errands.
trips.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's driving fewer miles, actually, right? But the same car, maybe. Yeah?
Spent less on other things.
Spend less on other things. That's cross-price elasticity. They sacrifice their children's food. Yes? Any other ones? Any other ones? Yeah? Travel less. That's right. They actually did drive less, right? So, or they moved where they lived or their job. But the big shocker was the change the car thing, right? It's like, wow, gas costs 50 cents more a gallon. I'm going to go buy a Prius. I'm going to spend $30,000 on a car to save 50 cents a gallon. Now, that's one of those things. Like, there's no economics going on there. Any economist who looks at the cost-benefit of a Prius is like, what are you talking about? And then, like, the deep ecologists are like, do you know how much it takes to manufacture a car? So, all the scientists were going crazy, but this behavioral response was what came through, and that's what matters, okay? We're trying to figure out what actually happens, what does matter, right? Should we predict this, or should we be cautious and say, something's going to happen, we're not quite sure? I never bet on things, it turns out. I'm just too cynical. So, about knowing what's going on. So, what I'm going to say, this is like simple theory versus empirical complexity, okay? And you'll hear this, you have econometrics, or you have micro theory, but, you know, empirical complexity, we don't know the magnitude of effects. We don't know how to measure things. This whole GDP thing, if you've ever heard the debate, what does GDP measure? Do we want to measure GDP? We'll get into all these things. Well, maybe that's macro. Missing variables, are we missing something that's really important? I don't even know. So that's empirical complexity is out there all the time. So there's this, so here's, and I'm kind of leading through, we're still on section called this thing here, why we're here. You don't have to write this down necessarily. I mean, you see if you like it. And I can't spell either. Stochastic, dynamic, computable general equilibrium. That's almost as cool as heteroscedasticity. Okay? It's like, what the hell does that mean? Or does anybody know? No? It's not because I'm sitting there going, ooh, I know more than you do. But this is what we will call jargon. Okay? Jargon happens a lot in every academic field. Usually it's to impress somebody else who you're trying to get a job from. But what does this mean? Stochastic actually just means random. Okay? Dynamic means that people respond to each other. Dynamic, I look at you, look at me, all right? So, stochastic, dynamic, there's kind of random interactions that we hope we can compute because we've done the math and we've assumed that people will act like robots. And general equilibrium means that we'll see how the entire world interrelates and adjusts. So, what you do is you get your stochastic, I don't even know, it's CGE. Stochastic dynamic CGE model, and then you say, okay, I'm going to plug in $4 gasoline, and out the other end, I'm going to get something. But the fact is that since nobody saw it, notice there was this thing in Wall Street that nobody saw, right? People are paid millions and millions of dollars, thousands of PhDs working on Wall Street, and they had no idea what just happened, right? Because their stochastic dynamic CGE model, which is what most of them were using, didn't get it. And now we have like this whole political fiasco trying to adjust to that. So this is the caution that I'm going to pound on over and over again in this class. And I don't want you to walk out and say, oh, this is all useless. I want you to walk out and have a little bit of respect for the difficult part of social science. Okay? And difficult, not like difficult cool, but difficult like we really don't know. Okay? So that's humility is what this is about. So, now, the big picture on this class is that I'm going to be doing, okay, so I'm working on lecturing. If you haven't noticed already, I'm kind of a random person. I kind of say things, and it's a little bit, and you will notice repeatedly, I have lecture notes. These are my lecture notes, okay? Very well organized. There's no PowerPoint because I can't even get that together, right? And the problem is if I had PowerPoint, I go, oh, this slide should be out of order. So what I'm going to try and make this disorganization, if you want it, I'm going to make this into a virtue in the sense that if I make a mistake, then you guys learn from the mistake. And I don't mean like spelling errors, because that's just a problem. But if it doesn't make sense, say, hey, it doesn't make sense. You can raise your hand. It's 100 people in the class. There's nothing wrong here, because I want to make this more dynamic than the typical I talk, you listen, okay? So I'm giving you permission. I know that most of you won't take that permission, but try and bring that out. If you're like, oh, I have to ask a question, then please do. Whispering to your neighbor is not the best way to answer that. So, and the reason I think that this is actually appropriate for this class is because most of you have got one class. I think the majority have one class in economics. You have a clue, but it's a really big subject, okay? But economics is just about reality. You guys all understand economics, you just don't have the jargon, right, to relate it. And so what economics really is a way of looking at the world. It's, economics, economists, sociologists, psychologists, anthropologists, all these social sciences, they have big overlaps because they're just trying to understand how people are, right? We bring a particular set of analytical tools, more statistics, more math, but we're all trying to understand how people are. And so I want you to be able to walk out and say, God, why is it that, I don't know, the bus is empty when it goes by? Anybody see AC Transit, those big empty buses going back and forth and back and forth? I always think, God, that is weird. And I used to be, this is just a side story, but I used to be thinking, as a hardcore free market guy, no subsidies, it's horrible. We should have no public transport. And then as a political economy guy, I'm like, wait a second, they're going to run those buses no matter what, because that's really popular to have public transport, even though nobody takes it, right? It's like politicians who love public schools, but they put their kids in a private school. So it's like, oh, we have to have public schools. My kids go here. And we have these buses running around empty, and I thought, we shouldn't do that. But clearly we have to do that, because somebody thinks it's a good idea. It's true, it's just ridiculous, right? And then they have now the bigger bendy buses, which are much more dangerous. Notice that they're 110% of the lane size. I ride a bike, and I'm like, I'm I'm going to die one of these days. Luckily, I'm only 5 blocks away, so I won't die this semester. So the political economy of the public transport system is it's going to happen anyway. Okay, now who's got a solution for the empty buses? Econ 1 solution. You took the final, come on, you're saying it. What is it? Make it free, right? Because if the price is free and it's still not full, if the price is $1 and it's not full, you lower the price, right? This is a demand curve until the bus is full, and then you start charging essentially a congestion charge, okay? So if the buses are empty, make it free. Who's anybody from Portland? Portland? Anybody gone to Portland? Okay, what's in Portland? The mass trans. Anyone? The loop, the inner loop, the outer loop?
The one that was installed.
Well, 3 years ago. It's like the new one. But in the inner city of Portland, but in the inner zone, the mass transit is free. If you go out, you have to pay because essentially you're a commuter if you go out. But in the city center, I was there for a convention, and believe it or not, you know, you go down, you get on the tram, and you go there. It's like, wow, I love Portland. It's a free tram. You feel good. You buy an extra cup of coffee. Everybody's happy, right? But it wasn't full, and they figured it out. They have this light rail running. Why not keep it full? And then when they figure it, so that's like a price discrimination type of model. Who is your customer? If it's like a tourist who's like, oh, it's complicated to buy a ticket and I don't understand and I'll just walk, compared to it's free, right? That's why you have free shuttles. In certain places you have free shuttles to take you downtown to have lunch. Who pays for the free shuttle to go downtown to have lunch? The president? The residents, no. The restaurants who are going to sell more lunch, right? I mean, they want people to come in. It's like, hell, we'll do it. Now, they might argue over who's selling more lunches, but the whole idea is to have the shuttle. And if they're smart, they'll get the residents to pay for it. That's political economy, right? It's like, yeah, we need this for our community. It's like, and the sandwich guys are like, yeah, we need it for the community. So it's all that's important. Keep in mind that there's multiple explanations, and there's a difference between what they tell you and what they do. Okay, and this is I have it down here somewhere. It's basically follow the money, right? If anybody's curious about political motivation, go to the opensecrets.org and check out campaign contributions and find out who's contributing money to your local politician. I love that. Right. See, I actually do have notes that I'm reading off of. Except that I can't read. Okay, so here's another thing that I think is a useful analogy to keep in mind. If you take a textbook, did anybody actually buy a textbook because they're paranoid they have to have a textbook? Does anybody have one? Yes?
I didn't bring it though.
Didn't bring it though. Yeah, quiet. But if you take a textbook and you look at chapter 1, chapter 2, and it's like it's all so organized, it's so perfect. And chapter 1 is right before chapter 2, and all the stuff in 1 you need before you get to 2, and then 4, and then it has there's no mistakes and there's no equations. And I basically think that if I looked at a building, it's like this building, it's like, wow, this building, that must be easy. You know, you just drop them down. But if you look at how it's built piece by piece, including the guy that put the beam in wrong and they have to take it out and it costs $3 million extra, what we're doing here is we're going to build up the superstructure, the infrastructure, and then hang the skin of the building on it so you guys walk out and say, I understand how these things fit together. And the thing that I don't like about people that walk in like me, and I've had years of economics, I say, oh, it's simple, you guys, just write this down. And you're like, I don't understand because I haven't seen it, right? So one of the things that I'm trying to do by not having a text and by going at things multiple different directions is to give you an idea of how things fit together, seeing it in multiple different ways. All right. So that might work and it might not work, but that's what I'm going to try and do. And then you'll walk out with much stronger intuition about how things fit together. And at some point you'll say, how does that fit together? And that's when you raise your hand and say, I don't get how this fits to that. Okay. And then we're going to have a useful discussion because when you guys are learning how things fit together, that's when stuff starts to click. That's when you'll walk out of here and say, wow, I learned something today, which, as far as I was concerned, you don't always have in the classroom. Especially in graduate school. Oh my God, don't even get into that. So, if anybody wants to get a PhD, anybody want to get a PhD in economics? Maybe. If I do a good job, you will, but we should talk. Okay. Danger. So there will be words that are going to come up all the time in this class, supply and demand, obviously. And it turns out that if you understand like 4 concepts, you have more knowledge than most PhDs. Supply and demand, how they work. Economists mess this up all the time. And everybody else, forget it. Cost-benefit, what does cost-benefit mean?
Is it worth your while to do something?
That's good. What's the cost part refer to?
Production costs.
Production costs? Not exactly. You raised your hand already. You.
Cost to yourself.
Cost to yourself. Okay. What's the jargon for that?
Opportunity cost.
Almost. Well, kind of. But there's another synonym for opportunity cost. It's a thing we have to make an equation.
Marginal costs?
There we go. One over here. No, not rather. It's not a firm. It's a person. Benefit, right? Now, do we want it to be like this or like this? You want the marginal benefit greater than or equal to the marginal cost, right? Okay. That would make you a rational person. Okay, so when we talk about rational economists, we say people are rational. That's what we mean. How somebody calculates marginal benefit, that's where crazy comes in, right? It's like, why are you doing this? It's like, oh, it makes me feel good. It's like, oh, okay, right? Like, but a couple days down the road, they might not feel so good. But at the time, most people make decisions doing what they consider to be the right thing, okay? And that's that's where we become humanistic. We have respect for people. But then, the problem is that when you're thinking, oh, I'm doing this, it's like, no, you're not doing that. So the miscalculations can happen, and we have to take that into account. Opportunity cost is super important in terms of like making life decisions kinds of things, and in some ways this is where you can learn something that you can use outside the classroom, as long as you don't lecture people in the elevator. Right, so this gets to this question of what goes into cost of benefits, right? So we have this word utility is a function of, I'm actually just going to make this. For the geeks out there, this is a vector. So, what's another word for utility?
Pleasure.
Work, maybe.
Satisfaction.
Satisfaction, pleasure, happiness. There's disutility, there's utility, right? I don't know why they came up with the word utility, but they did. And it's a weird word because utility knife, utility shed, whatever. But this is happiness, okay? And we have, and literally the analogy is we are climbing the hill of happiness, and no porno illusions here. So utility is about happiness. It's what we want. And it includes everything we want. Utility is a function of everything that we're doing, okay? And X, and that's where X becomes crazy, because X can be, I am happy as a function of the number of hamburgers I eat, right? That's a consumption thing, right? That's the whole idea of GDP. Or I'm happy as a function of the sunshine outside. Or I'm happy as a function of the whales, right? We're in environmental and resource economics here, so we're happy, we are either happy or we're studying people who are happy about these things called environments and resources, stuff that is really hard to hold on to, okay? So that's what we're going to be talking about, and the reason I say utility is because it means everything and anything to everyone, okay? This is why economists are called social science imperialists, because they go off and they say, ooh, look, the psychologists have something, let's just steal that and put it in our utility function. And then we have behavioral economics, which is called psychology, right? So we just relabel it and make it our own and publish more books. So that's what we're going to be talking about, different kinds of stuff. And the tricky part is with environmental and resource. So there's environment and resources. I want you to understand that what I consider the main difference between environment and resources. Who has an idea? What's an example of an environmental good? Anyone?
Air.
What?
Air.
Air. Clean air. Okay. Good. What's an example of environmental good? Air. What's an environmental example of a resource?
Water.
Water. Hey, you guys are pandering, aren't you? Okay. Actually, give me another one. Water's a little bit more complicated than that.
Bauxite.
Bauxite? That's good. We got our mineral boys in here. Bauxite turns into what? Aluminum, with the addition of natural gas, energy, right? Arc furnaces, maybe. So here's just examples, but you can look around and think about them. What's the difference between these two, besides that they're different goods? What's the main economic difference?
Rivalry is responsible for resources.
Okay. Is it a rival good? Air is a non-rival environmental good, right? So I'm gonna put that as a footnote as awesome. We're gonna talk about that later, but that's not what we're talking about now. So this is air is non-rival. What does non-rival mean?
One person using it doesn't mean someone else can.
Right. Okay. So it's I'm breathing the air means that I'm breathing it, but that means you can still breathe essentially technically other air, right? If you get in the phone booth with someone, you start having a fight after a while. But it's not the question of well, you're on the right track. I mean, but I want to get it to like one single dimension. But that's one of the dimensions that goes into this meta dimension.
Is it because you can make money off of resources and you can't do that off of environmental goods?
That's basically it. Okay, and it's essentially that you can have a market for a resource. You can exclude it. Okay, so rival and excludable are two different things, right? In terms of the different dimensions of goods. We'll get into a discussion of the dimensions of goods, property and goods later on. But you can have essentially the difference between a resource good is that you can have a market for it. Okay, natural gas, bauxite, yeah.
But then can't we just turn every good into a resource?
That tends to be what someone like me would say, right? It's like, well, we have a problem. Let's just make it into a problem. Let's make a property right and make a market for it. All right. The whole idea of carbon markets, carbon taxes, cap and trade, is that you're taking. So carbon is into carbon dioxide, goes in the atmosphere, heats the earth, we all die. Okay. So if we're worried about carbon going in the atmosphere because the air is it's a public good, it's a shared good. But we can potentially affect that environmental good by affecting the flow of stuff into it, which is carbon, right? So we're to turn carbon, which is now I'm going like crazy in a jargon, but we can turn carbon, which is an externality, right? Carbon is the result, it's pollution, it's the result of industrial process. We can turn that actually into a commodity. If it's a commodity, it's a resource, even if it's a bad resource, and we can make it into a market, and then we can tax it or trade it or do something like that, and therefore affect the environment, right? We haven't necessarily gotten to the idea of, I have a market for air, right, which is buying and selling air. We're worried about carbon and carbon dioxide, but that's essentially where it goes. Can we fix every environmental problem by making it into a resource? We can fix a lot of them. That's the one thing. But moving from, this is a good idea, which is the simple theory, to the empirical result is the difficult part. Okay? Let me allude to fisheries. Anybody fond of the salmon around California, the west coast of this country? You know a lot about that. What happened, not you, but what happened to the salmon recently in California in particular?
They just stopped fishing.
Stopped fishing because why?
They were running out.
They were running out. Yeah, Walmart ran out of salmon, right? There was no more salmon going down the stream for a lot of reasons, but more importantly, there was no control on who was harvesting those salmon. Okay, so it was essentially a tragedy of the commons. That's a paper we'll read in this class. It was a tragedy of the commons in the sense that all the fishermen were racing around and chewing up the salmon as they came back. That was a problem because they didn't get in the stream. It was a bigger problem because they didn't get upstream to spawn because the stream was screwed up for other reasons, and so the whole salmon fishery collapsed, right? And the salmon fishery, the fishermen, who many, many years said, don't bother us, don't mess with us, now they're like, oh, you know what? We should have property rights of salmon. Except they're almost all gone, right? It's kind of one of those, like, too late. But we'll see what happens. Maybe in 10 years they'll have another salmon run. So that was trying to convert a resource or a resource that had no market into a resource that did have a market. And when you have a market, this is the key. You can have supply and demand. And if you have, let's go to supply and demand for a second. This should be basic stuff. We've got price, we've got the quantity, we've got our demand, and how am I going to do this? And we've got supply. Now, what's going to be this here? What's this?
Equilibrium.
No, not equilibrium. This particular hash mark marks what? Which price? Market price or the equilibrium price, right? P star. So that's Q star, right? So, if there is no price, there is no market, what happens? We have a supply somewhere. we have a demand, but we don't have this. And what happens is, in fact, what we have, here's the way to look at it. A supply curve, what is a supply, what's the theory behind, does anybody remember the theory behind the supply curve? What is a supply curve? Because with the fish, let's talk about the fish for a second. There's a supply of fish, but what's the market equilibrium for fish based on? Or in this catching analogy?
It's the quantity that they're willing to supply.
Well, they're willing to supply, but it's not exactly, it's a production function from a firm in a way, right? The fishermen are firms, and taken together they have a production function, and they have, and the supply curve is actually based on the marginal cost of production, okay? So if you think about the marginal cost of fishing, the first fish, catching the first fish is very cheap. Those are the Indians that sit at the mouth of the river with these weirs or these nets, and they catch the fish as they go by. That's very cheap, very efficient, right? And then you get up here and you've got nuclear-powered submarines that are out there catching fish. Those are very, very expensive, right? So this, in a sense, is the supply curve for catching fish. And there's going to be a demand called, I want to eat fish, okay? So we can take that for granted. And this would be a market equilibrium, but what if this is the supply of actual fish? Right? At that price, at this quantity, we've got this much demand. People are willing to pay that much. And it's very cheap to catch them. Right? You're not in equilibrium. So the problem is that you go beyond, there's all kinds of, this is where you get into the dynamic things, but you go beyond where the fish are happy. You go beyond beyond the biological supply. So the technological supply is, and this is, I'm kind of very ad hoc here, but I'm trying to illustrate a point using economic tools. This is the technological supply curve given an infinite number of fish. Let's say it that way. Okay? It's just, there's fish out there. There's plenty of them. But then if there's a biological supply, which is this vertical line, then you're in trouble. You just went way beyond the number of fish that are there, and you can't catch them. You run out of fish. Okay? So, and one reason might be is because there's no price for fish. You just go out and catch them if you want them. So the solution in terms of economics is, well, let's put a price on these fish, and what we'll do is we'll actually shift the cost up. We'll put a tax on the whole. This is the fancy math part. That's the theory, right? We'll put a tax on all the fish so that we shift that cost up and we get an equilibrium at a, quote, sustainable catch. I mean, that's not meant to wipe it out, but that's meant to be sustainable. Okay? So the idea of can we put a price on it is, can we shift this environmental good, and fish aren't really environmental good, but can we shift something that's not in the market into a market? Now, that's the theory, right? Try and go do that. The salmon fishermen saw this stuff, they saw this train wreck coming for years. The economists saw it coming for 50 years before them. But nothing happened because it was all about, it's just one more year, I've got to pay off the Lincoln, right, the navigator. So that's why we have a fisheries collapse, because they didn't make it one more year. And that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about in terms of environmental goods and resources. So the biggest difference is going to, and we're going to talk about all of these, and water is someone said water earlier, water is very tricky because water is environmental good. You've got the water in the bay or outside, and the ocean right now is having a little bit of an issue because I know there's the whole idea of carbon in the atmosphere, but carbon is actually getting absorbed in the water. It's called ocean acidification, and carbonic acid is not good for beasties that live in the ocean, right? So reefs are having problems. All the plankton and stuff like that, diatoms are having problems, and I'm like, oh my god, apocalyptic kind of stuff, like dead ocean. I'm just freaking out thinking about that. So that's water, ocean as an environmental good, but water in a bottle is a resource, right? I can sell this, I can control it. It's excludable, it's rival. Okay, so water comes and goes back and forth. That's why it's really fun or confusing, depending on your perspective. All right, so, so the other thing is that in terms of timing in this class, it's an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes, but we take a break or we don't, right? Start at 10 after, you go all the way till 11:30 or 12:30. That's the normal thing, or you stop somewhere and everybody walks around. No, go all the way through.
Yeah.
So you guys just screwed yourselves. Okay, so, but that's okay. If I end early, that'll be fine. Because like getting 100 people in and out of the room is ridiculous. It'd take 5 minutes to get out and sit down again. Okay, so let me talk about meta concepts. We're still in the big picture, and by the time, because I'm going to come back and revisit this over and over and over again, not to bore you guys, but to give you see it so you can see it from different angles over and over again. And say, oh, I heard about the fishery. Now I hear about the timber. Now I hear about the oil. Now I hear about the corruption in Nicaragua. Now I hear about the corruption in the United States. Now I hear about the corruption in Iraq. And you're like, after a while, you'll identify a pattern called whatever it's going to be, corruption or fisheries or resources. So another big theme that's going to come up, back to political economy, is what's the difference between, what is break political economy into politics and economics? Anyone? And then tell me what the organizing concept is in each of them, or something that's, or just like throw out some words here. Let's just do it this way. Politics, right, and economics. This is one of those things where I want you to give me word pairs. One goes in each one. Anybody?
Partisan.
Partisan, is that economic or politics? In theory, that's okay. Theory or reality. More? Oh, what's the equivalent in economics? Empirical. I'm not going with that. Is anybody going? No, forget. Let's not do that. I'm going to write it down after I vet it. Okay, another one over here. Somebody. Politics and economics. There's two dead simple words that I want. That's like gold prize, gold star. Policy, and what's economics? Help her out. Policy. Theory. No, I'm not going to go with that either. Model, no. Laws, that's good. And what's economics? Not statistics, although they use statistics on both sides. I might have to go ahead. Results. Political results?
No, for economics.
Economic results. Political not results?
No, they said the policy.
The policy and results.
It will be like the consequences of the policies.
Okay, so that's in the right direction. Policy. So results and policies. So and someone said laws, right? Laws, policies. And in some ways, what you're talking about is oh, that's really bad cursive. This has nothing to do with, well, it's kind of to do, this is, they all relate together, but this is an idea. So we have an outcome, which is the result of things that are going on in a market. Let's just broadly define a market, okay? The market is controlled by the laws, and laws can be formal or informal. Those can be rules and norms. But those are controlled in turn by a constitution. How do you even make a law? Okay, so this is what, if you want, you can call it the different layers. I'm not going to push on this analogy too much, but I will get at it. When you talk about politics, in a sense, politics does have an impact on economics the way that change in the policies and laws will impact the market. So in that sense, if that's what you guys are getting at, yes, definitely. I don't know how to make that into 2 words, but let's do it right now and say, we'll say outcomes with that caveat, that that's what we're talking about. I'm going to use a much more basic set of words. Let's give you the easy one. Efficiency. What's the one over here?
Inefficiency.
No, but true. So economics? If economics is about how big do you make the pie? Distribution, right? This is equity. That word, fair. Fair means that I get what you have, okay? So politics, and that's the pie analogy is very helpful as an organizing principle. How big do we make the pie, and then how do we divide the pie up? Okay, that's why the Marxists had the most interesting idea. They said, let's, because Marx said, we'll have a capitalist economy, it'll be super efficient, it'll produce a whole bunch of wealth, and then we'll take it all over, and we'll pass it all out to the workers, and then we'll be fine. And he missed that. He didn't do stochastic dynamic general equilibrium because he forgot about the next stage. What happened next year, right? That's where the Marxists kind of fell apart, as witnessed by the USSR. So, which is kind of when you guys were born almost, isn't it? Like 1991? Yeah. Not, you guys are older than that. Late 80s. Yeah. Okay, good. So it's equity versus efficiency. Okay, so that's the kind of stuff on political economy. And that's a good way to keep those things straight. And it turns out with water, I mean, this is a very useful analogy with water, and I have actually a bumper sticker that I didn't bring. But it addresses this issue because people say, oh, we have a water shortage. What do we do? Oh, we'll just price water. What's the objection to we have a price on water? It's a basic commodity, kind of. It shouldn't be a commodity at all. What's the objection? It's a human right. It's a what? Right, not a privilege. Same rhetoric. Okay, you need it to live. That kind of thing is like. Unfortunately, the need it to live thing, and it's a human right thing. Human right is different than you need it to live because you need what else to live? Food. But we don't have like. So the human right is like we should have water for free. It's a right. But food, we have a right to food. We don't. There's no constitutional amendment that says thou shalt have a Big Mac, right? But there's plenty of stuff that says thou shalt have water.
Well, isn't that because you have to produce food but not really produce water? I mean,
How did this get here?
Well, but then when you produce the bottle, but someone just...
No, not the bottle. What's in the bottle? How did this get here?
Yeah, someone...
Where did it come from?
Distribute it. I don't know where that particular water came from.
I'm not trying to trick you, but I'm saying it came from somewhere else, right? It's not raining outside.
Right.
So the production of food and the production of water are very similar, right? It does cost money to produce both. And it might be handier to produce a chicken, right, than compared to water, because the chicken will eat whatever's around, and the water, like, where do you get the water? So, but the production is not exactly it. But there's this issue with water in particular that is a very, I mean, the South African Constitution, the right to water is in the Constitution. You know, you cannot deny a citizen 50 liters per day, per person. Okay, so I'm sitting there, I'm an economist, and the hardcore free market economists like we should always charge for water all the time. We're not talking about bottled water. And then the hardcore non-economists, whatever, the civil libertarians, like water should be free all the time. But there's an issue called production. You got to get it to people, right? If it costs nothing, we have demand-supply problem. So my compromise between politics and economics is that, yeah, everybody should have some for free as a human right, but then you should pay for more. Okay? And that's where it's uniquely difficult to explain this to somebody in the water business or somebody who's far-right economics, far-right by meaning radical market, or far-left in terms of crazy social engineering. They are not willing to compromise on these things. This is water. It's important. It's a really life good. It's like, no, you have to compromise. So what I'm trying to do is blend politics and economics. Some for free, and then pay for more. And we need to have these kinds of solutions. We have to at least consider both perspectives, and then try and sit in the middle and talk to both of them. Well, okay, that was a whole bunch of overview stuff. Does anybody have any questions just now? We'll get to the syllabus in a second. That's fine.
We still pay for water in this country, though, right? I mean, as far as tap water goes?
We still what?
We still pay for water.
We pay, oh, so that's the interesting little factor is that we, when you pay your water bill, you're not actually paying for the water. The water is free. You're paying for the distribution. Okay? And I think that the state water project in California, which is the big one of the big ones that moves water to Los Angeles, for example, it uses, no, I forgot, I think it uses about 10% of the electrical power in the country, not in the state, because it has a pump. Anybody driven down the 5, those big pipes that go over the Tehachapi's? That is like one of the biggest lifts in the world. And water is very heavy. So you have to push it over that thing. It takes a lot of energy. So that's what they're paying the bill for. I have 125 copies of the syllabus, so everybody should get one. Distribute. This is called. This is an example of the market work. Yes.
So there were 4 concepts like that we should know.
4 concepts that we should
Like
know.
that, like you learned what is supply demand, what's cost benefit, like 11 units.
Oh, did I not say 4? And to be determined. I don't know. That sounds like a good place to start. It's good though. I told you I'd be disorganized. Any other intermediate question before we get to the syllabus, which is a whole bunch of fun? Yes. Yes, usually you're paying for water treatment. When you get it from your tap, it's usually free. So this water comes from the Sierra Nevada, from the snow melt, so it's pretty clean. But sometimes if you're in San Diego, and you're getting your water, it came from the Colorado River, and it went through 7 people's toilets before it got to your tap. Right? So you hope it's clean. That's the whole idea. Anybody from San Diego?
I lived there for 2 years, and the water tasted so horrible.
Yeah.
It's like fuzzy kind of, and flat, and the weirdest taste I've ever had.
Yeah, and it wouldn't kill you, but it doesn't taste good. Yeah, I was in Davis. Davis, does anybody know Davis? It's got really groundwater, not so hot. Right? I came out here so happy about thinking, Berkeley water. Okay, anybody else need a syllabus? Anyone? Okay, your question?
But then you still pay for again, not to get it clean, but when it goes down the drain, I mean, do you pay for that? Because it goes into the wastewater treatment facility, in the ideal case, I guess, if it's not.
Well, this is an interesting situation. Usually you pay almost a flat fee for your wastewater, or you pay a fee in proportion to how much water you take in, because they assume what goes in comes out again, which is usually a good assumption. But the other one is that the history of water in the United States is that just discharge it in the river, and then the guys downstream will take care of it, right? So that ends up being horrible because you dump 1 gallon of crap in the river, and then you just you lower the quality of all the river water. Yeah.
So, what's your thoughts about the new LA County water policy where you can only water your lawns
That's an awesome topic for my blog. I'll see you there. Okay, so let's talk about the syllabus. But I appreciate the question. It's the whole water your lawn stuff. The mayor, if you didn't see, the mayor got cited for watering his lawn on the wrong days. And I'm thinking that's the dumbest thing I ever heard, right? Because this regulating what people do with their water is ridiculous. Okay, so this PDF is on BSpace. Everybody knows how to get to there, right? Okay, and the syllabus will be updated as often as I feel a need to, but this is a pretty reasonable framework. Notice it has the date on it. So anybody know why it's on 1 page? Save the trees. Why is the other reason? Huh? Budget cuts. You know what? How much does it cost me to make photocopies for you guys? 0. Anybody want a book done? I can do it. I'll only charge you. Forget 5 cents a page. Okay, it's not because of budget cuts. Why is it on 1 page? Another reason. Save the trees. That's a good one. I don't care about trees though.
You didn't want to carry a heavier stack.
Heavy stack. That's good. Personal load.
Save water.
Save water. That's way too indirect.
Save water.
The finished forests. Anything else? Huh?
Save ink.
Ink. Another resource? No. Time. My time. Right? I'm not interested in stapling together 125 2-page things or whatever. So, you guys are all young, you can read small print. And so the PDF version of this has got some clickable links on it, so you can get that off of BSpace. Especially, I know for the on the right-hand side it says the Hayek paper, Use of Knowledge in Society, the October 22. You can just click on that PDF and get it for free. If any link breaks, tell me and I'll fix that and send a link to the classes. So let's go in order here. BSpace, everybody should see that. Just as a curiosity, when you look at your BSpace and the calendar, does it show all these assignments from all your classes? Does anybody know about the calendar on BSpace? No. Okay, so that's completely a waste of my time to put stuff on there?
No. I think if you press calendar, and I think it only shows the one from the class that you're on.
But not all of them together?
No.
That's stupid. All right, well, the calendar should reflect what's on the syllabus, okay? And there's nothing on the calendar right now on your BSpace that is, go to the calendar and check it out, but just so you know. No laptops and cell phones. I don't like it. There's penalties. The videos, I'm not sure about when to post them. I'm going to put on today's later on this afternoon because none of you knew that I had this tricky incentive scheme set up. Here's my information. I'm in Giannini Hall, is just up the hill. Okay, I've got office hours and essentially a bullpen. Remember I told you about postdocs have no rights. I'm there with about 4 or 5 other people. But those are my office hours right now. 12:30 after class on Tuesday, walk up the hill with me, and then 3:30 to 4:30 on Thursdays. Faye and Diana are your GSIs. Diana, stand up, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Diana. I'm a second-year PhD student in the area.
Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry. My name is Faye. I'm a third-year ARE graduate student.
So these guys are my bosses, because remember, the postdocs are below the GSIs. They tell me what they can do. They can do office hours at those times and at those locations. I can't really deal with conflicts, like, oh my God, I've got a class, can you change your schedule? But if you want to negotiate an appointment or something like that, just go ahead and send me an email. Okay, so here's the class time. We got a lecture. We got our first lecture, the discussion sections. Thanksgiving is no discussions. The Thanksgiving week, no, whenever we lose one discussion, we lose all the discussions. Okay, that's why there's no discussions this week, and there's no discussions during Thanksgiving. Okay, I think those are the only two. The last lecture is on December 8th. It's not a lecture because it's RR, Reading, Revising, and Arithmetic Week, or whatever they call it. So there's going to be no new material. Luckily, I was going to give you guys prizes and stuff like that on that day. So that was before evaluations. I give you candy, right? So we'll do evaluations before. So grades. I am very, very anal about on time. Okay, if it's not on time, it isn't there. So when I say the homework is due, it's on time. And the points shown, we'll get to that in a second. Your grades will be based on total points, no duh. I'm trying to keep the class somewhere near cutoff, so when you have an 85, you're like, oh, I'm in B range, but I'll move it around depending on what I see. Okay, so it's going to be objectively subjective. Regrades. If you want to regrade, you type it, your reason, you hand it in within a week. So if you get it back on Tuesday, I want it back at the start of class the next Tuesday. All right? I'm just trying to, oh yeah, so the whole thing about grades, in terms of incentives and expectations, and so incentives, another key word here. Anybody know what intrinsic motivation means? Go ahead.
Motivated by doing the thing itself.
Close.
As opposed to being motivated by like getting paid or like.
Right. Okay. So.
Just the task itself.
Right. So. Intrinsic motivation is a motivation that comes from within you. You do it because you like to. Okay. I have roommates, and I like cleaning windows, and they are so happy because I just walk around cleaning windows. Like, why is he cleaning the windows? Like, I love cleaning windows, and so they're like, oh, cool. So extrinsic motivation is you do it because someone pays you, or you do it because someone, whatever. It's you're getting some external source. So a lot of you are probably used to the idea is I do it because I'm going to get a grade, because the grade's important to me, because my GPA is important to me, because actually, that's where the logic breaks down. Why do I have a GPA? But anyway, intrinsic motivations, you do it because you want to, right? You choose a major, you can choose a lot of different majors, but you choose the one that you like, theoretically, right? Because you want to learn that thing. So, when I talk about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, what I'm trying to say is, why does this have to do with regrades? Oh, we're just talking about grades in general, right? So if you're really worried about your grade, I want you to write it out, what's wrong, and then give it back to me before class starts. And so but we're essentially going over the extrinsic schedule, right? The grades, what your payment schedule is going to be if you guys turn out stuff. Oh, that's what I was trying to get to. Because we're making an agreement about expectations, okay? I'm going to say, this is what I want from you. If you deliver it, this is what you're going to get in terms of your grades. So that's the illusion. And it's an important illusion because we're talking about, when we talk about things like the environment, we're talking about why do people do things, recycle? Why do you recycle? the impact on you is essentially zero, right? Economists, it's the same economists have the same theory about why do you vote, right? There's a very strong economic tradition called it's irrational to vote, but people still love voting, right? Because there's no extrinsic payoff. They don't go vote and then get suddenly a higher salary or a day off of work or a congressional project in their districts. They go vote because they like it. They like feeling like they're contributing to the dialogue. They're involved. So this is why I'm getting stuck back and forth on this, why this has to do with grades. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. So back to the grades. There is a grade for attendance. If you miss one discussion section, that's free. If you miss 2 or 3 discussion sections, you lose 5 points of your class grade. Okay, we're keeping roll. We are going to double check, so don't sign in for your friend. If you miss more than 3, you're going to lose 10 points. Is that clear enough? Okay. And if you're, I have no idea about I'm enrolled, I'm not enrolled. If you're not enrolled and you want to still go to the discussion section, fine. I talked to the admin, by the way, about enrollment, and she said, well, just wait. I told you guys at the start, but I'm repeating it. Just wait for people to drop out. I don't know what to say. Sorry.
If you miss, you have to come next week. If you don't come, you're going to automatically withdraw from the class.
Oh, okay. Way more important motivation.
Syllabus, it says it's manual, so do you...
A manual? No, manual what?
The wait list. So do you pick who gets...
Oh, I don't. I would have a lottery. It'd be awesome. Be selling
order and how many people got it.
Right, something like that. I mean, you might know your position on the wait list. There's nothing I can do about that. As I said, convince the person next to you to drop. Okay. The 2 books are Robert Frank. This is useless. It's a book. The Economic Naturalist. This book here. So I said before, there's no course book. I just saved you $140. No, I'm spending your money. So you guys, I want you to read this book, and I want you to read the other book, which is Hazlitt, Economics in One Lesson. Hazlitt is a free download, or you can buy it for like $3. I don't know what the price is on it, used on Amazon. They're very easy books to read. I want you to read them, okay? Economic Naturalist is perfect. Every story in here is like 1 page. Put it on the back of the toilet, right? Go to the bathroom a lot, because you have to finish it by September 18th, okay? Now, I want you to read this because there's, like, every page in this book, or every story, is very, very good economics. It's very simple, there's no math, but you'll learn a lot about economics. And I want you to start thinking in that way, because, not homework 1, blog post. Every person in this class who's enrolled, who wants a grade, is going to write a post for my blog. Okay? I give you my time, you give me your blog post. That's worth 10 points of your grade. Okay? It is a binary operation. You hand it in and you get 10. You don't hand it in, you get 0. On October 22, the Hayek paper is due. I mean, you have it read by then. It's a very useful paper. Okay, we're back. And then homework 3, October 19th. These dates might slide. I'm just giving you a general idea. Now the briefing, there's 2 different briefings. It's going to be on the same topic. Everybody in the class will write on the same topic. It's going to be a 1-page briefing. This is going to be called Getting Your Point Across. Okay? If you haven't noticed, the only people that read anything anymore are students in class that are assigned to read it and people that are paid to read it, right? So what you need to do in this briefing is you have to make your point in essentially 1 page. Not one of these pages, but one 250-word page. And then, on the topic that we're going to decide, it'll be something like, convince me that there should be a carbon tax, or convince me that I should save the whales. Something like that. It's the kind of thing that you would hand off to a politician or a policymaker, and they would say, ooh, I'm convinced. Okay? Those briefings are going to be graded by you. It's going to be peer grading. Okay? Every person in the class is going to grade 3 other people's briefings with written comments on what they liked and they didn't like, and the grading of the briefing will be graded. Okay? And you won't grade the grading of the grading, but anyway, you get the idea. Okay? So I want you're going to write for your peer group, and your peer group is going to rank your briefings according to how well you did relative to the other people. It's a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place. Okay? So not everybody gets a gold medal, but we'll see what happens. That's going to be fun, I hope, and that'll be later in the semester. Olson and Schelling are the 2 other books. These ones are slightly more narrow in their topic, a little bit more complicated, but nothing even close to a textbook. The Logic of Collective Action is a very big classic. It's 180 pages. It's how do people figure out how to work together, okay? How do they cooperate? It's a very important book. I think he's actually a political scientist. But it's a very important book about things like the environment and resources. How do we get people to coordinate, to work together? Micromotives and macro behavior. Thomas Schelling. Has anybody heard of mutual assured destruction? Anyone else? In the back corner. What's it mean?
Basically means that if either of you move, you destroy yourselves, so that there's basically an incentive not to do anything.
Right. And what did it apply to?
The Cold War.
Cold War, right? So the USSR, the United States, we have like thousands of missiles. We can destroy the world 6 times over, and mutual assured destruction is like, if you launch yours, I'll launch mine, and we'll both be dead. Okay? There's a video on that going up on my blog next week. It's 2 minutes. It's very funny. So, has anybody heard of okay? How's that work? The end of the world. The end of the okay. This is how we go. I love that thing. It's so terrible funny. Okay, so you'll see the Hockey video. You'll understand the Cold War. But the guy Thomas Schelling is the one who's credited with this theory of mutual assured destruction. In a sense, we're not dead because of him. So he's important. You should read him. He's a very, very out-of-the-box economist. He talks about how people interact with each other. That's the same theme as the logic of collective action. And because at the end of the course we'll be getting into those more complicated, the dynamics, right? The interaction of people. And those books will both be due around that date, which is what? November 24, which is the week of Thanksgiving. By due, I mean you finish them. Okay, there's no book report, there's no assignment. Anybody who wants to save even more money can make a swapping deal with their friend. I'll read this one, read book A, you read book B, and then we'll swap halfway through. I don't care. Do what you want. Briefing 2, peer grading. There is some grading for peer grading, and then there's a final exam on December 15th. Now, that's most of it. Any questions about that so far? It does add up to 100 points. I double check. No? Straightforward? Okay, we'll see when we get there, right? Experiments. In the discussion sections, we'll be doing some experiments. Along with the hat of being a resource economist, environmental economist, an institutional economist, I'm an experimental economist. And what that means is that you're going to go to discussion and you're going to play some games. So it's not that hard. And then you'll learn something, which is why we're doing that. We've gone through the texts. I recommend all those things under optional reading. The textbook, those other ones are other textbooks. You can get them if you want to. Underneath lectures, that's what we're supposed to be teaching, basic microeconomic tools, blah, blah, blah. Q&A, so at the start of lectures, what I'm happy to do is, if you have a question, you're like, I don't get this, I read this in the newspaper, I'm arguing with my parents, start the lecture with that, because I love answering questions. It's much more interesting than my random notes. So bring Q&A. We'll do some math every day to make sure that you meet the requisites. Then we'll do economics. Then we might take a break, we might not. And then we'll do more economics. Okay, and then there's this massive provisional detailed overview schedule. Oh, let me mention 2 other things. Markets. What's the difference between a missing market and not having a market at all? What's an example of a good that's in a missing market or not in a missing market? There's a good that needs a market but it's missing. Current events, pretty simple. Anyone? They're trying to make a market in it. Carbon, right? The idea is that we have this environmental problem, we can make a market in it, we can solve it. That's what I mean by missing markets. That's what the jargon is, okay? What is no market? There's no market. No Beatles had a song about it.
No demand, no supply.
No demand, no supply. No, there is demand and there is supply, but there's no market for it.
Emotions.
Close. Come on, Value love, right? There's no market in love. And so sometimes, remember, the solution to every problem is not a market. Okay? So I want you to discriminate between those things, or at least keep it straight. I know you know the difference. But because there is an overlap between these things, okay? And sometimes someone says, hey, we could do a market in it, but really it's over here. Don't use the wrong tool to solve the problem. That's all I wanted to say about that right now. And then there's the idea of bargaining versus efficiency. So who's ever tried to find a place to live? A room. You want to rent a room. I need a roommate. Or the dating scene, which is just as bad, okay? So, what is it called? You go see a place, you see the ad on Craigslist or whatever, you go see the place, you say, oh, I really like it, and then what do they say?
Fill in the application.
Fill in the application, show me your parents' social security number, anything else, what else do they say?
Price.
Price, no, they already do that, what else do they say? Do they say yes immediately, or do they say, wait a second, I got to see 3 more people today? Or they do say yes to it immediately, and you say, wait, I got to go see 3 more people today, right? Okay, that's bargaining, what's going on there. And some people would call that wasteful bargaining, right? The way to get around wasteful bargaining is to go to the central office of housing at Berkeley, and they assign you a roommate. Bang, you're done, right? You may hate that roommate. So there's such a thing as being efficient, because you solve the problem, or having wasteful bargaining. And wasteful bargaining, is it wasteful?
Not if it gives you marginal benefit.
What's that?
Not if it gives you marginal benefit.
Marginal benefits, that's right. Well, this is actually very tricky because the marginal cost benefit to you might be different than society or whatever. But that's the point. We don't think it's wasteful to go around and negotiate roommates or negotiate dating, because usually we want to have a choice on who we end up with, right? So that, you can call that wasteful bargaining, or you can call that socially optimal, whatever. So there's this tension, it's called the tension between bargaining and efficiency, okay? And that tension is not always present, it's often present. It's the same thing as going into the supermarket and you want to buy some yogurt. Anybody ever tried to buy yogurt in the supermarket? Just someone says, your roommate says, go get me some yogurt. And you're like, wait. Which one do you want? Oh, I want the non-fat, peach on the fruit on the bottom, the organic, and you're like, whoa, wait a second, let me write this down. Now, when you go to the Soviet Union, they figured that one out. Yogurt, that's it. There's just one type. In fact, it's Belarus. I went to Belarus, they had yogurt, and I didn't have any choice, and I was a little bit happy, not too happy. So, that's the bargaining versus efficiency. Okay, so are there any other closing questions on this stuff? I'm not going to read through the syllabus, because it's roughly going to follow that order. Anything else? No? No? Okay, great. So you guys... Oh, wait, stop. I won't be here next week, but you will have guest lectures from fabulous Claire and fabulous Damien. So obviously you should come to class, and then I'm going to quiz you on what happened when I get back the week after. All right? See you guys later.
Oh, by the way, the first section will be next Monday.
The first Monday sections are meeting next week. You have sections mandatory, otherwise you get dropped.